I know, in the midst of our usual study, like practicing paradiddles on a pad, checking out cool fills or licks, it's easy to forget that this is really what we want to create with it, right? This is the result we're after, this gut-level feeling of, wow, this feels good, this grooves. This is what it's all about. And aren't you sometimes amazed that drummers with great technique don't move you that much? Sometimes drummers with poor technique can play something that feels and fits great. And sometimes even if the tempo is not perfect and the subdivision is kind of funky. Groove can transcend those guidelines if you know where it comes from. So what is groove and where does it come from? Groove is that emotional connection that we feel when a song or instrument makes us want to move, not our head or our feet or whatever body part. It's a certain power that grabs us, that makes us feel a particular way. But where does it come from? See, we as human beings develop through evolution a clear sense of what's important to us and what's not. One thing crucial to our survival was to judge quickly emotional states of a fellow creatures. Does he look happy, relaxed, or in a mood where he's likely to attack? Or just to judge which kind of living being is in front of us, or whether that's a living being at all. Does it breathe? Does it move? We became masters that can scan our surroundings for hints in that direction and respond to it emotionally. An outgrowth of that is that when we see a curtain with wrinkles that throw shadows, our brain sees faces in them. Or when we look at clouds, we see faces or recognize other shapes that we want to see. Our brain loves pattern recognition and organizing and takes every opportunity to interpret the information around us along those lines. And it's highly emotional. Why can someone with a mask that suddenly appears make you scream and scare you? It's because of that. And we feel a different connection to living beings than to lifeless objects. We have an innate desire to feel connection to living things and feel connected to something. This sensation of warmth and connection and safety is what is at the core of that great feeling we have when something is really grooving. Is it not the case that you have warm feelings more towards another human being or a cat than to a metal rod? Why is that the case? The difference between the metal rod and a living creature is, well, life. And what do all living creatures have in common? A certain rhythm of breathing in and out. Or of course, the heartbeat. It's the first thing we hear in our life. Our hearing is fully developed long before we can see, giving us safety and certainty that we're not alone. If a heart skips and becomes faster or slower, we have a problem. It is life-threatening. It has to be in a certain consistency and rhythm to provide life. It's the same with breathing. Now the good news is, if your drum part skips or becomes irregular, faster and slower, the consequences might not be as severe, but the discomfort it creates to the listener is emotionally connected to that, at least to some degree. To have these things in flow, in a certain repetition, gives us a feeling of comfort that everything is as it should be. A little story. When my son was 1.5 years old, I carried him on my arm and took him for a walk in a park at a sunny day. He and I just looked around at things, and there were some people having a picnic. There were a couple of blankets and pillows on the ground, and in between, there was a cat. First, I didn't see it because it looked like one of the blankets as well. We both looked at it, and my son didn't show much emotional reaction. But then you could see the cat's belly go up and down, because it was breathing in and out. Suddenly he smiled. I didn't realize why at first, but it was because he had this emotional connection. This is something living. The other blankets were also soft and had the same color and looked the same, but this was a living being. I really think this is at the core of what we do with tension and release, downbeat, upbeat, sound, silence, to create something that has life, is lifelike. You wouldn't have a groove without these qualities in place. That brings us to when we want to create this emotional connection to the audience or the other musicians, we will need that give and take, breathing in and out, tension and release. We will need that. Now, what does that mean in a practical sense? I spoke in the time chapter about what machines are very good at: accuracy, calculating, all those kind of things. But this give and take, feeling, this tension and release, machines have no ability whatsoever. Machines are horrible at that. That's what we are good at. For example, if we use this metronome, let's have it play perfect time and perfect subdivision. So if you think that that is all that groove is, listen to this and try to nod your head or move to this. Will this make you want to dance? Let's listen to it. There's evenness and consistency, but in a groove sense, there's nothing there, right? If you would play that between two songs in a dance club or concert, and people would stop dancing and look at you in a weird or disappointed way, and the owner would fire you probably as a DJ. But the question is, what makes a phrase? What makes that repetition cycle, this give and take kind of emotion? How can we get there? Check this out. Does that not create a different feel? You're able to move to that. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is not a beautiful ballad that lets your heart melt. But I think you can get the idea of how a phrase begins to evolve, and this cycle feeling begins to appear with it. You know where the downbeat is here. You know which is the pulse. These are the things we need to create that emotion. We not only need that time or subdivision, we need that pulse, that phrase. We need tension and release and repetition. So again, how did we get it in this example? Through important and unimportant notes, through dynamics, through loud and soft. By that, we have space between the important notes. These are the parameters we need to create this emotion and feel. Another thing I want to touch on is, why does playing in front of the beat or behind the beat create different emotions? We talked earlier about when a machine calculates perfect tempo, so the spaces in between, the impulses are all the same, that creates not only that it doesn't get slower or faster, but that certain sense of consistency, that the beats always come where you expect them to come. You always hear that impulse when you expect it to be there. That creates a certain kind of trust. Trust is an emotion. Consistency and trust is there when you don't have to worry about something. You know it is there, which makes it reliable. But also, like wallpaper, it doesn't jump out at you. It can disappear a bit. You don't have to worry about it. This is an important emotion we drummers also have to be able to convey, to maybe not go into the forefront, but to be in a supporting role so that no one has to worry about what we do. We're just there to support the music and to be reliable. What happens if you fool around with that? We talked about what actually happens with the notes in the time chapter. In this emotional or field chapter, let's see what that really creates and where I think it comes from. Let's think about this. You have an appointment with a good friend of yours. You say you meet at 2 o'clock. So you're at home, expect him to come at 2 o'clock. You get a short message saying, sorry man, I'll be 30 minutes late. So maybe you were running around and getting your things together, packing everything because you wanted to go out and do this and that. Then you see, I have more time than I thought. I can relax. He comes later than expected. If you're not angry at him, you get more relaxed because you have more time than you thought. It's that feeling of, I did expect it there, but it's a bit later. I think that's the emotion that comes, the heaviness, the relaxation from placing the backbeat a little bit behind. It comes a little bit later than you would unconsciously expect it to be. It doesn't have to be conscious. It's an emotional thing. You expect that snare drum to hit, but it comes a bit late. So it's kind of lazy, relaxing, and heavy. So playing in front of the beat is the opposite. Let's say you have an appointment at 2 o'clock, your friend should come over, and you're doing your stuff, preparing, but then at 1:30, the bell rings and he comes in. It's like, whoa, I didn't expect you early. Maybe you're a little bit stressed because you didn't expect him. You expected to have more time for yourself. This is the emotion that I think is created by playing in front of the beat. You didn't expect the beat, so it almost surprises you. It's always a bit earlier than you would unconsciously think. So on that emotional level, these are the phenomena that we create when we play around with time. And I think it's nice to be aware of them at least once, to know that we can really manipulate these things. I find it remarkable that we as drummers have that much power. And with power comes responsibility to shape the feel of the song. The exercise for this would be to simply try it out both with and without the click, and again, analyze your recordings in respect to that. Is it more exciting or more relaxing the way you play? Can you do it without manipulating the tempo? Also listen to recordings of your band or rehearsals, or you playing a beat for 5 or 6 minutes. Really see whether you can do anything better in regards to creating a phrase, creating tension and release, creating repetition, to really make the most out of your groove, to really create that feel of this heartbeat or a pendulum going left and right. Do you see any of that when you play? Can you feel that? Or are there too many notes or too many fills that feel like a heart that skips? Bottom line is, be aware of the emotional effect things have that you do on your instrument. Go away from the what you play and focus on how you play it and how that makes it feel. Sometimes the what you play will have a different how it feels effect that you may have thought. I want you to shift your focus and analysis and priorities and practicing towards the effect you create with what you do. And I can't say it often enough. The best way to do it is to record yourself and compare different approaches. Then I want you to adjust what you play to your aesthetic and your newfound realizations. Have fun. People always say about the drum set that it's a very loud instrument. Haven't you heard that before too? Drums are a loud instrument. All right, let's have a listen. I can't hear anything. Weird. So I think it must be the player who produces the sound and the volume. Listen, I know it's hard, especially for us drummers, but what if we take full responsibility for what we create here in terms of sound? And this is much more than just volume. As soon as you embrace that and don't only leave it to your hands, you have much more tools available to shape the impact of your groove playing. Why? Think about it. What is our vehicle to create all this emotion and to create those subdivisions we talked about? It's of course the sound that we produce. That is our medium to get across all we talked about and will talk about on this DVD. So let's start from nothing. What is not being played is equally as important as what is being played. A rest is not nothing. A rest is silence. That's a big difference. I'll say it again. A rest is just silence. It's not nothing. If you treat it like nothing, you will not get all the benefits from the subdivision, the spacing, and the awareness of the phrases that we learned so far. Frankly, without space, there isn't any subdivision. The fact that there is no sound does not mean there is no music. To the contrary, it's an important part of it. This is crucial, especially with respect to groove. Let's apply this to fills. A rest is not nothing. It can give things next to it more value. Like Victor Wooden says in his book, Music Lesson, it's like you think in mathematics that 0 is just nothing. You could say that. But if you place a 0 after a 1, it changes the value of the 1, right? It's a 10 then. Your rest is your 0. I think it's a very effective weapon that we can use sound-wise. I'll play 2 versions of a fill. First time, I'll fill the bar before up with something. Second time, I'll leave space. Didn't that space make the fill more important? Put it on a pedestal? It does create time, but also contrast. But back to the time aspect. If you find it challenging to play super slow tempos, this next exercise may solve it for you within minutes. Check it out. So after we covered what sound and no sound can do, the next thing I want to address here is what I call sound time. When playing slow stuff, and I mean painfully slow, drummers usually get very insecure and nervous because there's nothing to do. They don't control the huge space that is in between those beats that are being played. And although having subdivisions in your head can make it easier, another approach is to, well, listen. What a concept, right? Let me tell you how. First, let's agree that the ride cymbal is maybe the most incredible instrument ever put on this earth. Oh, sorry, I got a little excited here. Let's listen to the ride. Let's listen how it sounds and when the sound ends. Do you hear the overtone spectrum, how it has a certain shape to it while the cymbal decays? Listen to it again. Now try to play the next stroke right before you can't hear it anymore. Now pick another point in the shape to start the next note. Now keep listening and focusing on this, and simply add the other instruments to it. I'm sure as soon as you've tried it, you'll have a whole other perspective of time playing by letting the sound guide you when to move on. It's a very comfortable and musical way of timekeeping and another invaluable addition to your toolbox. Instead of counting, this will really get you to listen, and as a side effect, will kill the desire to overplay at the same time. Even with only short sounds available, simply imagine them as long notes that sustain till the next one comes. So instead of dot, dot, think dot, dot. This is a more musical you in control now, because it feels and focuses on the space instead of the execution of strokes. And it's this change in focus that can make all the difference. Sometimes when we hear a beat in our head, by default we play the downbeat with the bass drum, play the backbeat with the snare, and play the subdivision with the hi-hat or some cymbal. I want you to open your mind and look at the sounds you have available in a more broad sense. What is really necessary to create a groove? We almost created a nice phrase with the metronome before, right? We didn't have different sounds available, but different dynamics. So maybe take everyday objects and try to create grooves on them. I'm not showing this to you because I want you to become a great percussionist on everyday objects, although it is great fun, and I'm sure you already do that, at least to some extent. But just be aware that your go-to sound options might not be your only sounds available to create the same grooves. So check this out. Let's take this groove. The beat will stay the same. I will respect the sound roles, so deep sounds and heavy sounds will stay the same, and uplifting or high sounds will stay the same. But it will be played on different sound sources. experiment with that. This can be a great way of coming up with a super creative drum part that might be perfect for a song that you have to play. And you only did it by changing the individual sounds, but staying true to the sound roles. Now get individual parts of your drum part, so the hi-hat, the snare part, the bass drum part, and vary them in dynamic. Here's how it works. Play a simple groove, something you can play and you're comfortable with, then fool around with one instrument at a time. Make it louder, softer, louder, softer. Here's the key. Do it without changing the dynamics of the other instruments. This is a killer independence exercise and much harder than it sounds. Some troubleshooting to make this exercise most effective. Please apply a strict form to it and make it as clear as possible. Decide which instrument you want to focus on next and change, for example, exactly every 2 bars. That will save you from just practicing being inconsistent with your dynamic and morphing it all the time. And the challenge is that usually the other limbs want to go with it and change the sound and also change the time feel. Different dynamics force you to change your motions, so it will fool around with your technique, and by that maybe the placement of the beats and all that kind of stuff. That's a great independence exercise and sound exercise that will serve you well when you want to create a good drum sound with a great feel. Sound plays a huge part in making your grooves feel different. That's why you have to understand the concept that I simply call the captain.
Heavy sea today, huh? Man the lifeboats. Abandon ship. Well.
And meanwhile, just as ridiculous,
Cabin crew, prepare for landing.
this was silly, right? Because there are different captains that can only do a good job when they are allowed to work in their field of expertise. In different styles of music, there are different captains who really have to be in command and steer the ship of music, if you want to put it that way. Let's take a look at the jazz captain. The captain of the ship is obviously the right symbol here. The other instruments are more there to give it character and to do interplay here and there. Here it's really important to have the right symbol on top. The hi-hat and snare drum kind of go underneath that dynamically. The point is, you could only have the ride and still be able to convey the style or even carry a jazz trio through the tune. Let's look at a James Brown kind of beat. Here the captain is hi-hat and snare drum. I'll do it again, and I'll leave away the bass drum after a couple of bars. The funny thing is that the feel really remains, right? The bass drum doesn't carry the feel of this style. Lastly, I'll play a rock beat, and I'll leave only the captain in charge after a couple of bars. Bass drum and snare have a huge role here. I want you to see that again, not only what you play is relevant to convey certain styles and groove feels, it's how you play it. So which captain is in charge of the dynamic? Now that you know the rules, I want you to break them. Check this out. By that you can really shape grooves of other styles to fit the feel of another song, or add an interesting twist to the style you're in. A great tool to get many variations out of one groove, and that only by changing the dynamics of the individual instruments of the drum set. Super fun to toy around with. If you practice that with every groove you can already play, it will immediately multiply your repertoire. It's a very powerful tool. In closing of this chapter, I hope I was able to convince you to focus more on sound and make use of the huge possibilities here. And next up, there is the physical side of things. The sound was our vehicle, our transmitter, our voice. The machine that we need to execute it all is our body. Let's dive right in. The most fundamental thing is breathing. Normally, we don't pay attention to it when we breathe out and in and out. But see, now you do, because I shifted your focus to it. So this is what I would ask you to do. Because what some drummers do is this. Right? Everyone does versions of that without knowing it. This can be time relevant though. Have you asked yourself why you speed up in challenging fills? Possibly because you hold your breath. When you hold your breath, your body gets into danger mode. It thinks, wow, what happened? We stopped breathing. Because of a fill? Okay, if this fill goes on for much longer, we will die. So, come on fast. Let's get it over with. You may think this is silly, but this is basically what happens. So select a groove and choose a rhythm of breathing that is comfortable in time. Breathe in 1 bar and breathe out 1 bar. It's very hard to tell you for sure, of course, how much or how often you should breathe. It's an individual thing. But as an exercise, take a tempo where 1 bar is maybe a bit slower than you would normally breathe. So you would breathe in 1 bar, 1 bar out. And just do that for a while. It's a great meditative space that you get into when you do that. Then play fills that maybe are challenging to you and continue that breathing. You'll be amazed how much more it keeps the fill and feel in check, and you get a more calm and controlled space to operate from. Relaxation is another thing. While practicing or even on stage sometimes, I remind myself of posture, and especially to relax my shoulders. A good question to ask yourself is, can I do this more relaxed? Do the shoulder test. What is the shoulder test? This. Can your shoulders be more back, more down? And the elbow test is this. You're doing your body a great service and yourself if you make sure that you are relaxed. Here's the exercise. Record yourself playing a groove very tense for a couple of bars. And then try to be as relaxed as possible, almost super loose. And listen to it afterwards and compare. I bet you will hear the difference, especially with challenging stuff. Although it's counterintuitive at first, it can be the key to a breakthrough. Try it out. Some troubleshooting. When you do something that you've never done before, like to release tension, it might feel very awkward at first. You're not used to it, but it may be better for you. The way your body feels can tell you a lot about how the groove feels, but don't get confused if it just rebels against something new. This is simple stuff. You just have to remind yourself about it every once in a while and observe whether it has an effect on your playing. And let me give you a hint, it definitely does. Are you upright? Is your back totally bent over? Maybe it's helping you or not at all. I have to admit, I sometimes play in postures that from a medical perspective are not the best, but it gives me a certain feel that I use to create a certain emotion. I'm not a doctor, I would say whatever works for you. But it's worth looking into and having practiced a relaxed default position that you can come back to when you face problems. And again, this is long-term stuff. Postures like this might feel more relaxed in the moment, but we all know that long-term it causes problems. So take a long-term perspective here. What I mean by that is, if you play very stiff, There is no wonder that you sound like it. Remember, emotion comes from motion. Listen, I'm not saying you should get up while playing and shake your arms out and dance, but whenever you feel your grooves are too sterile or not breathing enough, you can improve them by moving with the phrase of the groove. This is something you can see with many great drummers like Steve Jordan or Steve Gadd. It can be as simple as looking to one side or to the other, in quarter notes or nodding your heads in time or halftime. Allow yourself to get into this zone where you found a motion that fits the phrase of the beat that you're playing. And you'll find out this way is almost impossible not to groove. Also try to continue that motion during fills. It can automatically put them into the same flow as the grooves. Try it out. Guys, what many drummers do is this.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is horrible. Don't let that happen to you. You don't want to have the train effect where it takes you a while to get into the feel, and that you need one bar or more to build up the intensity that should have been there from the start. So what's the solution? You simply operate from the mindset that the song starts before the song starts.
1, 2, 3.
Get into the motion and the whole body movement before. Remember, emotion comes from motion, so why not literally start air drumming before you begin to play? It has been documented many times that I do this before a song starts. I'm not ashamed of it, because I want to be there at the first beat with all the intensity and flow I have available. This way, you don't have the freight train that slowly picks up tempo. Let the train already go at the desired speed and then just jump on it. Air drum before a sound can be heard. That's the essence of it. Let your body play the groove already as much as you can before it even makes a sound. That helps immensely when you start a song, and it also helps in rests. This can be a game changer. Keep your body tension when there is silence. Remember, a rest is not nothing, it's just silence. Don't let your body get into vacation mode when there is some space in the music. Sometimes you can see drummers do something like this. Please, don't do this. Why not do this? Keep the tension and the flow with your body. Because if you don't keep it with your body, it's a million times harder to have it there sound-wise. Where should it come from? Again, this is your machine. Keep the motor running. This really applies to practicing in general. Use all the information you can get in terms of how your body moves. Only then you can trace back the relationship between the way you used your body, the way you were thinking even, or anything, to create a certain groove feel that you liked. And by that, you have the tools to reproduce it. And by that, gain great consistency in your playing. We're so lucky to have an instrument that is very visual. Compared to a singer When he has something wrong with technique, it's much harder to see. A simple thing for us is to just use your eyes and all your senses when practicing. I often see drummers practicing like this. This is the equivalent of a drum teacher like this.
Yep, no. Nah, something's not right. No, I don't like it. Do something else. No, that's not it. No. Change.
Ridiculous, right? If you practice, look at what you're doing. If you have problems, try to use all your senses. Listen to it, feel, and look at it while practicing, or document it through a recording or even video. That way you can use the physical data you get from your body to become better.